A very good morning to you. I'm still thinking today about the experience in Abraham's life, which called for so much faith, when he was asked by God to go to a mountain with his son, with firewood, with a knife, and until the very last moment, he thought he was going to offer his son as a sacrifice. Let me read that bit from Genesis 22. And when they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Then Abraham put forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. He said, Do not lay your hand on the lad, or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, On the mountain of the Lord it shall be provided. Now that is Genesis 22, 9 to 14. And this is really my thought for the day. Often when you read the writings of Paul in Romans and other books, when he talks about Abraham being the father of faith, mostly the reference is to the original covenant when God promised to bless the whole world through the descendants of Abraham, and that Abraham believing God for the birth of Isaac was the incident when God reckoned to Abraham his faith as righteousness. But I think this incident, this experience, later on in Abraham's life, probably 13 or 14 years later, calling on him to do something which he could not possibly understand. I'd like our thoughts today to be on this story, and particularly on the phrase that says, And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. Now the reason I want to focus on this is, and I must encourage you, those of you who are on the WhatsApp for Monk's Yard, I will post a link to a photograph of an exhibit that is in the British Museum in London, and it is entitled The Ram Caught in the Thicket, and it is made of gold and lapis lazuli, and it stands about that high off the table. Howard, it's about that high. It is exquisitely crafted, and it was found, was found in the tomb of a very rich lady in Ur of the Chaldees, Ur, the city that Abraham had come from. And when I saw it for the first time, when I was visiting the British Museum and looking at this amazing gallery full of artifacts that are dated to round about the time when Abraham and Sarah lived in Ur. And they give us a wonderful insight into things that they used in Ur and how well advanced their civilization was, the writing that they used, the way they sent messages to each other. They didn't have paper or papyrus. They sent messages to each other in pottery made of clay, and they would write their messages in the clay and then fire the clay so that it would be hardened, so that the message couldn't be wiped out. Then they would cover it with another layer of clay and put the address on the front so that the envelope, as it were, the clay envelope, was sealed. And then when you got the message, you tapped it and the outer shell fell away and you could read the confidential message that was inside. They have some artifacts. They have some actual still sealed envelopes of clay with their message inside them. They're wonderful artifacts there in that gallery. When I first saw that ram caught in a thicket, I asked questions. I said, well, Lord, did you talk to the people of and give them a vision of a ram caught in a thicket, that they should make one like that? I've never seen anything like that made in such a special way, made of gold and lapis lazuli, as a thing of a great value. Or did Abraham, when this had happened to him, send messages back to and tell them God had provided with a ram caught in a thicket, and that this was for them a bit like the rainbow was to the Jews, a promise that God would keep his covenant and God would never send a flood, a promise. The ram caught in a thicket was the promise that God would provide. And they had it in was found in And there is no explanation for why this was found in There's nothing in the writings of the people of that time to explain or to say what they were thinking about in making such a wonderful artifact. It's something to think about. This was a very special moment in Abraham's life, and he obviously shared it with his family and his people, and shared with them, or God pre-told him that he was going to provide with a ram caught in a thicket, and it was something that came back to him as he turned and he looked at the ram caught in the thicket, and he remembered a legend or a story that was in I don't know which way round it was, but whichever, it doesn't matter actually, whichever way it was round, the ram caught in the thicket meant to them, the Lord will provide. And that's a wonderful thought for today. The Lord will provide. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.